Hi there, and welcome to yet another edition of the SOHB Story State of the Art Branding podcast, where we believe that brands, contrary to public perception, are not built in design studios. On branding is not design, branding is not a color palette, branding is not a logo, but branding is what kind of feeling you actually create and stir in the human heart. And today we are very, very fortunate and privileged to have someone who's been there, done that over the last two and a half decades. And we want to kind of hear it from the horse's mouth in terms of not just the journey, but what the journey is actually made her to be. So welcome to the podcast, Lulu Raghavan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Suresh. Absolutely fabulous to be here. Always happy to talk brand design 24/7. So thank you for indulging me in my favorite topic.
Lovely, lovely. It must be part of the DNA now, right? In terms of,
It is. And I would have never imagined that I would land up here. We're talking about all the common people that we know. They all had backgrounds in art or design. My background was actually in science in school. I did economics and applied math. But a chance meeting with somebody led me to Ogilvy. We were just talking about Piyush. First day, first job, I met Piyush and Sonal. Fell in love with advertising and branding. Worked for a gentleman called Sridhar at Ogilvy Consulting. And that's how brands got into my DNA.
Right, absolutely. And sometimes it's a fix, right? It's some kind of an intoxication, right? You might probably traverse industries, but the branding bug does not leave you.
I think so. And
Yeah.
I can't even think about what it would be like to be outside because, as you know, I've been at the same company for 25 years. Ogilvy first and then Landor for 25 years. So very much in our space. But now it's so deeply ingrained, it's definitely not going to leave me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you able to, considering the amount of the depth and breadth of what you've been doing at Landor over the last, and congratulations on the Silver Jubilee. Has it passed or is it a milestone?
It has.
Okay, congratulations. Yeah. It's incredible in this day and age to have that kind of length and, of tenure, especially when you're looking at 18-month, 24-month tenures, which becomes the, flavor of the season, so to speak. So in your vast, tenure with Landor, what have you seen, in terms, I'm interested in knowing the metamorphosis, in terms of, because very recently, and I'm going to be soon writing a blog about it, so maybe forgive my vested interest. Do you think there is some kind of short-termism that is crept into branding vis-a-vis what used to happen during those days when you started off, I wouldn't say good old days or bad, I don't want to stand judgment. We don't want to stand judgment. But what do you see the change and the metamorphosis over a period of 25 years?
You're absolutely right. There is short-termism, but it's not only in marketing. It comes from how investors reward companies that are listed on stock exchanges. So the pressure starts there. It also starts from investors who are making bets in startups. The desire for the quick return is definitely there, right? Because that's what's expected of you. And so then I think it's just natural when you have to show returns quickly that you deploy the tools that are going to give you those returns. So for example, performance marketing campaigns, right? They give you much faster returns than a campaign that's building equity over a longer period of time. I think that's the reason why it has shifted to things that quickly prove the value of the work that you're doing. I don't think anybody intends it. Any CEO, any management student, any mid-level executive will tell you that the long term is what counts. But the pressure is there, and you have to change behaviors. You have to change the course in order to meet those short-term expectations. Even for us, though as a head of APAC at Landor, I'd love to take more medium or long-term calls. It cannot be at the cost of month-on-month performance. So then how do you essentially balance those two? It becomes extremely difficult.
Very delicate ice, right? It's a double-edged sword you have to kind of traverse. Like, I think half or even most of us are now spending our full time living quarter by quarter.
That's a nice way to put it, yeah. But perhaps even day to day, right? Just
Yeah.
because it's so hectic and so busy. I'll be very honest with you. Before in my career, I used to look at the week or look at the month ahead. But today, there's just so much in today or the next day that your horizon immediately shortens.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And do you see, again, given the journey and the depth and breadth of that you've traversed, uh, firstly, probably there is an overlap of marketing. Sorry, branding is marketing, probably the overlap, or I don't even know whether it is mutually exclusive. That is one. But eventually, I think, do you think we all realize that it is not about marketing, it is about human behavior?
Oh, that's a difficult question to unpack. In my mind, it's very clear. Branding is very different from marketing. Now, branding is about defining what you stand for, how you stand apart from everyone else. It's not only about advertising and marketing, it's a fundamental organizing principle of a business, what you stand for. What you stand for, that's super relevant to all your stakeholders. And then how are you different? And that's quite strategic. It's much closer to the business. That then informs your identity, your actions, your behaviors, your experience. And marketing is only one element of that, which is creating demand. But everything else has to be aligned with the brand as well. So I see them as quite distinctly different, Suresh.
Okay, all right. I was considering about the perceived overlap, right? I think we use it very loosely, one for the other.
I think we use it loosely, and sometimes clients, and these days a lot of younger clients also, everything is digital and social, and branding means perhaps how your visuals appear in social. But that's a very, very limited understanding of brand as just a marketing communications tool. It's actually an asset, right? A strategic asset that companies deploy very, very intentionally to create financial value.
Absolutely. So you talked about, what you stand for and how you stand apart, because the way I'm seeing it is that we are in an SOS situation, which calls for an SOS, where the SOS is actually the sea of sameness.
That's right.
That is, the frenetic commoditization of anything that looks, everything is looking the same, right? And we knowingly smart, highly competent, high caliber, well experienced professionals knowingly getting into red ocean territory, right? So so that's why I said, it's time we wrote the obituary of something called, with due respect to Roger Reve's, USP, the unique selling proposition, because it is so commoditized, right? And we believe the brands of the future, and it's a sob story call as well, that the brands of the future will stand more for UFP, which is the unique feeling proposition that the brands will emanate and stir in the end user's mind, rather than the USP, right? Because an Airbus 380 is an Airbus 380. Emirates has it, Air India has it, KLM, Air France, Delta. But you knowingly pay 10 or 15% premium to Singapore Airlines to fly them, because how the brand makes you feel, whether you're
Sure.
flying economy, premium economy, business, or
Yeah.
first, right? So given that, are brands actually looking at it in that particular manner, or as you mentioned, the pressures of the immediate, the now, the here, the now, and therefore also the tools available, performance marketing, real-time metrics, algorithms and analytics and all of that? Do you think there is a not because of lack of intent, but there is probably a pressure of doing that? Is it coming at some kind of a cost?
I think the smartest marketers do know that ultimately the differentiation comes from a combination of functional attributes as well as emotional attributes and aspirational attributes. I do think the performance marketing over indexes on the functional, and then there's no differentiation. Every ad, every sales pitch in a particular industry looks like every other. And it's when you put in that feeling and aspirational angle or lens, when you start to create differentiation in what the brand is saying, how it makes the customer feel, what it actually does. So I do think that what you're saying about UFP is absolutely right.
what do I try to make of what you just shared, Lulu? Is it you experience or you see that there is a courage deficit in brands today?
That's a very bold statement to make, to say there's a courage deficit. But I don't think that marketers and brand builders are doubling down on differentiation as much as they should. Which is why even us as consumers, you feel that sea of sameness, right? You go to pick up a protein powder brand like we were talking about, or a soap brand, and the benefits, the products, the features are all of the same. And brands are not really standing out. Even on social media, they all look the same, they say the same things. So I would hesitate from saying lack of courage, but somehow people are finding it difficult to differentiate. Because it is scary to go out there and say that you're different. And it's hard to find a tangible difference.
So do you see this because human beings are a tribal we are tribes, right? So do you think that becomes an albatross around or not? Even when you are building brands and growing brands, that I'd rather be birds of the same feather, that we can flock together. Is it what you're trying to relay?
Maybe there's some element of
Safety
it.
in numbers and
You're from advertising, even in the older advertising days, the ones that really had the courage to stand out, do something completely different were few and far between. Yeah. Somehow that desire to be super differentiated is not there as much, though the financial value of that to the brand, to the business has been well documented. So there is that fear of zigging when everyone else is zagging.
Yeah, I think that brings me to a very interesting book. You might have read this. It's a beautiful book addressing exactly the same issue. It's a book by Alan Gannett called The Creative Curve.
Okay, no, I have not actually read that one.
Let me see if I have it here. I'll get it for you. Where he mentions exactly the thing that you just touched upon, wherein I want to zag when the rest of the world is zigging, right? And the famous Ben & Jerry ice cream brand, okay? All SKUs, super hits after the other. And then one fine day, they decided to launch the lavender flavor of ice cream. Okay? It goes into the market and it's an absolute disaster. So the brothers come back to the drawing board and they're trying to figure out what is wrong with it, And then they said, which is the most favored, seamlessly embraced and consumed flavor in the ice cream ecosystem? Obviously, it was vanilla.
Vanilla, right.
All right. So they decided we'll go back into the market and this will be now a vanilla/lavender flavor. The product took off. So what the prognosis is that when you want to do something which is really avant-garde or tangential, have something familiar and layer the novel on top of that,
Actually, I read this just recently somewhere else.
Okay,
there was a good example of that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's completely rejected.
Because even people have the fear. It's not just the creators and the makers and the brand guardians.
You don't want to embrace it.
Yeah. Is somebody else consuming it, So I think, it's all...
That's a wonderful
insight. So you're not Landor, I'm just hypothesis, okay? Wear a neutral object. You always wear an objective hat, wear a neutral hat now. Some categories of brands, that you see definitely would need therapy. Which are the categories that come to your mind foremost, And it can be the Indian ecosystem, it could be the global. But when you see that, I wish I get a chance to kind of do something about it.
Sometimes the financial services brands, telco brands.
Join the club.
Yeah. Even auto brands, they all look the same, feel the same. Real estate brands. I think those
those are really concrete examples,
Yeah.
Because and also just you mentioned, auto brands and some of these brands, again, I'm sure it is certainly not caliber or competence, right? That you think that there is a celebrity endorsing my brand. I can therefore, in the process, the trade-off is I can take the common man's or common women's intelligence for granted.
Yeah, but Suresh, we all love to trash celebrities endorsing brands. We say it's a lazy man's thinking. I couldn't agree with it more. But actually, it's effective in our country. Karina endorses Dell computers, laptops, it sells 8% more. When you have such compelling proof, why wouldn't marketers resort to that? They're also thinking short term, they're not thinking long term of what is the association of the brand ambassador, the attributes which fit with the brand. Many, many cases, look at the cement brands, for example, some insurance brands that are attached to celebrities, even some, hard electronic brands. None of them should really be having celebrities as such, but they do because the results in our country do show.
Is it that's a learning for me. Thanks for sharing, actually, because I feel that crutch of a celebrity is probably a defensive move because I'm not sure about my sea of sameness brand or product. Okay, and therefore I invest in the topmost, highest paid celebrity to get the eyeballs, and then I tick off the first A of IDA, and then hope that this will kind of translate. And what you're saying is it is translated to transactions?
Yeah, I'll need to pull out the research, which is recent, but I have read study after study that does show that.
It's surprising. I'm pleasantly surprised,
I have
actually.
engaged
Thank you
with
for sharing.
clients as recently as a year or 2 years ago, where they have all of the data on why a particular cricketer worked for their brand. And so then it's really hard to move away from it when they have concrete data.
All right. So, let's stick to that and we'll continue that conversation. So, suppose I'm just putting my neck out there and saying that, okay, there is MS Dhoni endorsing 22 or 24 brands.
Correct.
Right? How does the end user, distinguish, one brand from the other? What is a recall? Because there is something that is being taken away from one brand's recall at the cost of something else, some other brand's recall, right? Isn't it? There is so much I don't even know whether it is an Orient fan or whether it is an X or a Y or whatever it is, simply, you recall it simply because you're probably working in the space and therefore it is. But that is not the case with end users, right? Most of the end users.
I think it'll depend on the context and the success of the communication. But clearly, in that example of dilution, many brands are going to lose out and won't get the benefit of that celebrity endorsement's aura. What I'm talking about is when one celebrity endorses one brand, not when a celebrity endorses 24 brands. The dilution happens like crazy.
And what also happens is the other part of the question, Lulu, is that when you have this as a crutch, right? I don't know. I am sure it is unknowingly. Knowingly, the level of creativity is so suboptimal.
100%.
I don't open a sunroof and say I can do it all because I'm driving this car.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, we are far more intelligent than that. Yeah. It's very insulting, actually. Right?
You're back to your point, consumers aren't really thinking about it that much. We're bombarded by communications. It's probably us who are analyzing it and dissecting it. And in general, consumers have a disregard for advertising, right? Everyone complains about the quality of advertising and how useless it has become these days. So I think it falls in that category. Agree with you. And I think it becomes even more difficult when for people like us who are establishing brand strategy, establishing, the traits that a brand needs to stand for. And then you suddenly have this brand ambassador you have to also put into the brand strategy. It becomes quite difficult because many times it's a force fit.
It's a force fit, exactly.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think you hit the nail on the head. So you spoke about brand strategy, Lulu. I want to ask you again, forgive the purposeful provocation, brand purpose. How much of it is actually walk the talk and how much of it is marketing theater?
It has been marketing theater for a long time. But for me, purpose goes back to, do you actually have a real reason to exist? Are you just another Me Too product, Me Too service, Me Too company? Or are you serving a unique role in consumers' lives? And it doesn't have to be something that's marketed, that's communicated, but even internally, to create that sense of belonging, to create that affinity for the workplace. Any company that has a very powerful purpose, I think, is important. If you remember Bill Gates, when he started Windows, his vision was putting a laptop in the hands of every consumer around the world. And you're coming to work saying, that's what I'm doing, to change their ability, right? And to empower them. That's something really super powerful. Or if you're going into an organization and saying that, we're here to eradicate poverty, then your role is very, very different. So for me, purpose is less about marketing and actually more about fundamentally defining your unique reason to exist. And then a lot of engagement with all your stakeholders becomes a lot easier if you have a very, very powerful purpose, which is beyond just making money. Right? Because there's only shareholders, you have the entire stakeholder universe.
Absolutely. Beyond making money and beyond optics.
Yeah.
Right, because some of those purposes are brilliant, isn't it? If they're carried through, and I'm sure a lot of them are doing it as well, right? Whether it's Patagonia and those kind of people, walking the walk, the founder's truth being lived all through the brand.
Yeah.
It's incredibly, don't buy my jacket and all that. It takes a lot of guts, gall, gumption to actually come out and say that, right?
Yes.
I wish Marlboro would come and say that, listen, don't smoke. It's a great campaign idea, right? I kind of just flip the thing as such, So, and again, sticking on brand, and you've been part of so many brand transformations. I'm very curious to understand, Lulu, from you. And obviously, with that kind of level of insights and intellect and experience, you would be reading the room, right? When you're suggesting something which is
executive
radical.
Presence.
Yeah, radical. So, how much of these kind of brand transformation ideas get embraced or accepted, and how much of it has got to do with culture? Because once upon a time we used to use the word, again, very, very loosely, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and lunch, dinner, then it happened. Today I feel that culture is strategy. Okay, how much of wherewithal and the empowerment and the flexibility or the latitude do brand owners give branding agencies? How much of a catalyst can a culture be for brand transformations?
Well, the culture is super important. I would say a lot of times, and I prefer it when a project gets stalled before the project has been awarded. We'll have a board presentation and some board members will say, I don't agree that there needs to be change. And then the CEO will say, okay, fine, this is not the right time to do it. Sorry, agencies, we'd called for a pitch. Landor, you're the top agency, but there is no project. I almost prefer that, Suresh, because it's worse when you work with an organization. We worked with an organization for 2 years, and then there were some changes in leadership. The CEO was still the same, but there were some new leaders, and 2 years later, still stuck in strategy, going round and round, and suddenly the case for change was no longer urgent. And then you're struggling meeting after meeting, and then you realize it's because not everybody is aligned on the case for change. So I believe that once a branding agency is on board, it's the responsibility of the CEO to embrace. Maybe the marketing person started the project, but the senior leadership has to embrace it, has to align stakeholders. That's the only way that transformation can happen, because people don't like change at any level. And we've faced this a lot. It's less about the agency and more about what's right for the brand. And on our part, I think agencies also sometimes push too much towards revolutionary change, not respecting enough of the equity that's already been built. So I'm a huge believer in, keep what's working, delete those elements of the identity that are not working, and add a few elements. Fundamentally, brand transformation comes to a very simple 3-column chart. Here's what we want to keep: our agility, let's say, and our trust and the faith that people have in us. We want to lose the impression that we're not for younger people, let's say, and when we want to add some elements of innovation, for example, right? And then it's about how do you drive this into the culture. So the CEO and the leadership team have a job of making the culture ready for change and transformation.
So you all do culture workshops and all that before suggesting a reasonably mammoth or a Machiavellian transformation. Is it something that you all undertake, or do you think that is a necessity for branding agencies to do? So
But
that
it's an absolute
ground
necessary.
zero level, yeah.
It's an absolute necessary. Any brand strategy has an implication for culture. It has an implication for the customer experience. And you've got to pay attention to both. Typically what happens, Suresh, is when you lay out a new brand strategy, you're also discussing the consequences of that strategy. What are the implications? Which some companies sign up for. And when I say sign up for, they understand. Some don't. Some want a new strategy, hoping that nothing will change. But the ones who do it right, Mahindra, for example, when they transformed...
Just plucked the words out of my mouth. I was going to say,
Yeah.
rise and shine. Forgive the pun,
Yeah, no, but Mahindra spent 3 years in change management. And what the brand stood for was then drilled deeply into every aspect, performance appraisals, even the business plans and how they were evaluated. Anand Mahindra walked the talk. Not every organization does it in that very rigorous manner. But it's absolutely important.
Yeah.
You can't say, for example, that you're very agile and fast to market and have loads of silos.
Yeah. That's
Right?
so
Or you can't
contrary.
say customer friendly and customer first, and then the minute you make a booking in your, let's say, booking your house in real estate, once you put the money down, then you can never get a hold of anybody else in the organization. Right?
Yeah.
All of that happens.
Yeah, so true. Are you also, like a lot of us, concerned about, and this has been going on for quite some time, so it is nothing novel, in terms of the CFO also masquerading as CMO in organizations?
That's not one I've actually come across. In fact, I love it when CFOs actually understand the investment in brand. We've had several large, complex assignments where the CFO has been the most vocal advocate of the project, because I think he truly understood, in that case, it was his men, the value that a transformed brand could have on the business. But I don't know if you had another layer of meaning into that question.
No. So that's again, here again, just like the celebrity endorsement thing, this is a pleasant surprise. Because I've heard from a lot of brands and people who are into consulting that something which is an impediment which they were not expecting. Okay, and whatever you're suggesting or whatever you're actually kind of strategizing or drawing up a roadmap on, you're expected to kind of show this is the envisaged upside, right? It is not that. And in some of those big final meetings, all those people are, all those heads are there in any case. And it seems that, and there is some empirical evidence to go with that in terms of a lot of the things get sidetracked or put on the back burner because purely for the sake of the fact that doesn't comply with or suit the taste or the preference or even to loosely say it, a mood of the CFO. There have been
Right.
and a lot of people have actually kind of been very, very verbose about it. So
I would say the onus is on us as marketers and brand builders, even in larger organizations, to prove the value of the work that we're doing.
yeah,
Sometimes we don't always do a good job of that, of connecting it back to the business outcomes. I know that you can't always attribute brand transformation to success of the business, but clearer attribution to what actually will change when you have these interventions is important. I think everywhere brand teams do struggle to justify their existence, and it can only be done with a closer alignment to the business and understanding of how the work drives business outcomes.
I think that's well put.
And also in the boardroom, frankly, Suresh, a lot of times advertising marketing people are seen as, oh, the fuzzy people, right? They're very few and far between that can logically make a presentation, strategically defend, talk about the ROI and the value. So you have to be very, very business oriented. You've got to use financial metrics. And these days, lots of tools are available. We have a practice called brand performance, which is the fastest growing practice at Landor, which is our brand consultancy, which essentially uses data to mitigate risk of brand decisions. And part of the work we're doing in brand performance is also to talk about the value of brand teams and their interventions on the business.
So yeah, I think I couldn't relate to you more. I think that is so the need of the hour, so to speak, because maybe the onus, like you said rightly, is the onus is on us to pull up our socks.
Yeah.
And go with a greater degree of conviction and backing and rational and logic.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why I think even the likes of now McKinsey have gone to outcome-driven pricing.
Sure. Yeah.
It is not just a pie in the sky and beautiful decks and whatever it is,
exactly,
right?
strategy is equally as abstract as our work.
Exactly.
Right?
So even Accenture is following suit is what I understand, outcome-driven pricing. Therefore, the comfort level across the C-suite
Correct.
is there. It is not just pie in the sky. And you can't blame them for it. Yeah. But it's like you said, it's too abstract. How do I kind of distill? Where is the wood? Where is the trees?
Right.
So it becomes a challenge.
And historically, a lot of visionary leaders have embraced branding because there's a leap of faith that it works. If I look at some of our big clients from yesteryear, the erstwhile CEO of BP or the CEO of FedEx, these large global programs that we did, there was that inherent understanding that perception drives financial value, and perception is important. And the brand image, the way that customers feel you across the entire experience builds that reputation, which has incredible financial value. So that leap of faith is there. Of course, there are studies that show that the index of strong brands beats the S&P and things like that, but it takes a leader to say, yes, I know it works, and I'm going to do it for my organization.
Noted, absolutely. I wish there is more representation, because I think the women in leadership and women in branding, they come with a certain edge. And I'm proud about it, actually, because their EQ levels are far more better than men, and they understand human signals far better. What is your take on that? And just you can be neutral and objective about it, and because you've been in the business and you're also a woman.
There's no doubt, Suresh, that a lot of the traits that are required for great branding strategy and design, things like empathy, collaboration, leaving your ego at the door.
Asking why multiple times,
yes,
right?
And bringing people along, storytelling, emotion, intuition are all traits that come a bit more naturally to women. On a case-by-case basis, I'm sure I know for sure there are loads of brilliant marketers and brand builders who are men. So at a very macro level, I think it's hard to say that women are better brand builders than men, but certainly there are a lot of traits that make it advantageous for women to be in branding because it more naturally comes to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Any icon or brand builder that you followed and you get inspiration from, or it could be two or three, somebody whom you follow and you actually kind of look forward to the next step. Anybody that comes to mind?
I follow companies. I follow leaders. One of my early ones was Indra Nooyi. I've talked about a lot. I think she did some incredible things for Pepsi. Sheryl Sandberg being in such a senior position, what she did to advance women. I think Lena Nair, closer to home, what she's doing with Chanel, how she's changing the flavor of who Chanel is, how it goes to market, the kinds of things it does, some very, very bold moves there. Very interesting. So I follow a lot of those. I think the sports brands are quite cool. And this whole athleisure space, whether it's a Lululemon or Alo and so many others. I've been watching this whole Lululemon space. Personally, I think it's a very fascinating space. That's after denims is the next big thing, right?
Great brand as well.
That really took off, yes, but then it's been under pressure by copycats. And then it's interesting to see how the market has then sort of spread out, where you have the Lululemon stuck in the middle. You have brands like Alo that are coming up who've created more of a well-being brand driven by influencers. And then you have a lot of the cheap alternatives on the other side, but they're doing pretty well as well. Peloton was another interesting brand that I observed, where that hardware...
Crisis and opportunity.
Exactly,
COVID.
exactly, right? It went through like crazy, and then it again dipped like crazy, because after COVID, nobody wanted to be stuck at home. But then they brought in influencers and classes. They realized that it wasn't just the machine, but people wanted to follow others with their classes, and then it's kind of taken off again. So I look for inspiration in many, many categories. I wouldn't say there are one or two people that I follow, but in terms of authors, I really love Marty Neumeier. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah. I've interviewed him for Brand New.
Oh, you have? Okay. And I met him at a conference in Delhi once. I just love all of his books. He writes so simply, so clearly. There's always something to take away from his books. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Some of the other branding books are just so full of jargon. But I love Marty's because it's super simple. So that's one I definitely follow in our world.
Okay.
And I always look for what he's saying, where he's going. I love the fact that he started Level C, which is the school for branding. And it's empowering so many people around the world.
Yeah, my personal favorite is Rory Sutherland.
Oh, yes, of course, Rory.
I think, again, I had the opportunity and the privilege of interviewing him.
He's just absolutely brilliant,
incredible,
right?
Yeah, incredible.
He's a
he's a
level.
university by himself, I think.
Yeah.
So probably this will upset the industry a bit, but we can be very stand naked in their own truth, Do you think the industries the agencies have become execution factories, wherein the actual onus was of creating brand truth or delivering brand truth, right? What's your stance on that?
I think we've lost the power we had in the boardroom. A lot of it is also the talent that is in our industry. Before, from IIMs, people were coming into agencies. They had a certain caliber. Not to say that only IIMs have the caliber. I'm not an IIM person. I think there's talent everywhere. But a lot of the most talented people graduating today, advertising is not their first choice. Marketing is not their first choice. Marketing needs to reinvent itself. Not only do we not have the best talent, but I also think we have a perception problem. We're probably not seen as adding value. I feel bad for many of our clients because they are struggling to justify their existence in their organizations because very few CEOs truly believe in the power of marketing and branding. So yes, we've lost our seat at the table, not seen as the most effective practice, perhaps also a bit behind in time. I once was speaking to a very senior person in our industry. We were at an HR conference and I was saying, oh yeah, these HR people, they're so stuck in time. They're 10 years behind. And he looked at me and he was like, don't get offended, but marketing is no better. He said supply chain is the one industry that's truly embraced technology and gotten to the forefront. So I was a little bit shocked and humbled when he said that. I was a little bit smug with my, HR is so behind. But he was, and actually he's right. We probably have not kept up as much as we have. And frankly, a lot of agencies are still thriving on the 30-seconder despite all of the death knell that's surrounded on it. They do say they are beyond that, but clients give feedback that no, they haven't actually moved on. Very big names
It just takes me to that next question, we as a country, India, have a lot of unicorns, and there are world-class, billion-dollar companies coming up, That is the one side of the equation. The other side that I see is that where are the global iconic brands from here? Where do you think is the problem,
I don't think it's where do I think is the problem? The short answer is deep pockets. To be a global brand, you need to be in many markets around the world. You have to be very marketing and brand led. You have to invest in customer experience, right? And not a lot of our brands have the deep pockets or the mindset to truly penetrate. Maybe we go to Africa at best, sometimes our neighboring countries. But who has gone global? It does require deep pockets.
Okay, so I'll dovetail into that and I'll give you a perspective and see where I'm coming from. There's something that we're working on as well for a module on learning and development. The caption of the sprint, not a workshop or a program, it's called What Ails Indian IT Corporates. I'm taking one segment.
I would love to talk about that sector.
Okay, so brilliant visionary founders, deep, they are trillion-dollar companies, most of them now, close to.
But it's mindset. Remember the second thing
the
that I
TCS,
said, yeah.
Wipro, Infosys of the world, right? Why are we so content at being sophisticated back office operations? I want them to launch the next Xbox or a Netflix or an Apple or a Nintendo. It's great that, you're providing software for the Australian Open, you're there at the English Premier League, all of that. But what are we as a culture still, and I want to be proven wrong, I want to be wrong, are we as a culture so risk averse? So I think it is more a question of mind. That's my observation. It's a mindset re-engineering or a mindset recalibration that is warranted as much as the need for deeper pockets,
Agreed. Let's assume they have deep pockets. It's a mindset of investing not only in these big marquee events that certainly address the awareness. There's a huge gap between Accenture, IBM, and then all of the Indian players, right? Just in terms of awareness in the US, in Europe, in all of those markets. But then, Suresh, where is that equity and reputation actually cemented? It's in the interaction, every interaction that your customers in the US and Europe have with IT players. Fundamentally, the way they sell, the way they interact has not changed. And then comes in the Accenture guys, the IBM guys. It's a completely different experience. Our guys are still same in many, many instances, right? And I've heard this from a lot of industry insiders that until the experience that customers have of IT players, until that doesn't change at a very tangible level, that perception of us being order takers, BPO, good at that, won't change. And it's ironic because they have the smartest people. They're probably doing some very cutting edge strategic work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But going back to what we said in the beginning, perception is reality. You have to shape perception to open those doors, but shaping perception also means that you have to have that substance.
I hope they do it sooner than later, because with the kind of frenetic activity that AI is bringing about, this mindset recalibration has to happen sooner than later, because otherwise all the homegrown advantage of a mass of people available,
right,
multiple number of engineers at beck and call, those are no longer advantages anymore, right?
And you're right, probably that industry had the best chance.
Right,
Absolutely.
Not just as a brand guardian or a brand or professional, but more also as an Indian, you feel that, why not, right? The Taiwans of the world, the Israels of the world can do global brands, and what stops us from doing it? It's certainly not talent, caliber, competence, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's where we are. So we get onto our rapid fire questions after all the lightning and thunder of the previous set of the conversation. So Lulu, here we go. One brand that feels truly alive.
You need to watch out for this brand. It's 1-8, Virat Kohli's brand with Agilitas that's coming out. Every time I see the brand on LinkedIn or on Instagram, there's a certain energy and anticipation. It's sports, it's shoes, it just feels so alive.
So it's the breakaway faction of Puma, right?
It's coming in its new avatar, and I have to say we also worked on it, so I'm extra excited
I
about it.
have a slipper of the 1-8 brand.
Oh, is it? Well, you'll have to see its new avatar.
Yeah,
I think
lovely.
you'll be very pleased. There's that aliveness and energy.
Lovely, lovely. I think it's so beautifully explained. I think what also the visual commentary that I see is that it's also so representative of Kohli. When you mentioned about the alive and the energy.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think hats off to them. Good on you. One brand that feels emotionally hollow.
I have to say Indigo. And I feel sad.
Compared to when they started off and their communication and all that, isn't
it?
It
was so quirky. It was fun. It was the most talked about brand in every boardroom. Everybody said, we want an Indigo. And look at them now. Look at their response to the crisis. I fly Indigo once in a while. I try not to fly it. But it feels cosmetic and it doesn't feel like the soul is there.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think to me it is Asian Paints. Just sitting on their haunches and one word that defines great leadership.
I want to say empathy, but
overused maybe.
Overused. So I'm going to use something which I heard from Sanjeev Mehta at Unilever. I think it's a nice call to action for all leaders. Ambition. It's humility and ambition.
Yeah.
Ambition to do something purposeful, but humility to stay grounded even as you're rising.
Absolutely. In fact, I interviewed Dr. Amar Kaisi from Trinity, who's written a book called Ambitious.
Okay.
HUMBITIOUS,
Nice,
and exactly what he's talking about there.
Yeah.
One design element people underestimate?
Sonic. I think that's so important in this world. Sonic identity, which is part of the design of a brand, can cut through and create that emotional connection that we were talking about so much more.
Absolutely. I think you still remember Nokia because of the thing, or
Exactly,
and maybe even Britannia for that matter.
Absolutely.
And very recently, if I'm not mistaken, was it MasterCard?
MasterCard, yes, has a very unique sonic identity.
Yeah.
And frankly, one of the most memorable parts of advertising were all those jingles. I can still sing some of them.
Yeah.
Can you do that today?
Absolutely. In fact,
Not to say that sonic identity is jingle. They're different things.
Different, yeah.
But they're part of the same universe.
Yeah, because there are so many ways in which you retain certain things about a brand. No, this is a wonderful way to kind of retain it. There is not much of coercion.
Correct.
Right? It can be subliminal, it can get under the radar, but it can also get into their skin.
And nowadays, if you look at automotive brands or look at even telco brands, whether on the app or on the the human digital interface in the cars, it's just that sonic identity is popping up in so many places, connecting those memory associations for the brand.
Absolutely, because you need as many touch points as possible, right?
Absolutely.
So the last one, Lulu, you're doing great job. 80 out of 100. One more question to go. One piece of advice for young women entering branding.
Believe in yourself. A lot of times, women especially are ridden with self-doubt. In so many meetings, I see women prefacing their responses by saying, I'm not sure if this idea is good, but...
It's a very defensive way of saying it, right? Yeah.
Cut it out. Just say it. Let people judge for themselves. I was interviewing a very, very senior person today. I interviewed 2 people, and one person today, I really liked her, but then she said so many things to dilute her own confidence. I was like, well, you're going to be quite senior, and I'm not really sure that's going to work. You need to be confident. So younger people, I would say, believe in yourself, what you're saying, the value that you're bringing, because then that has a cascading effect on how people see you and believe in you. And that's something super important that we must carry into the workplace. We mustn't constantly be looking for validation.
I think that's a great place to end this wonderful, insightful conversation, Lulu. So maybe just to encompass, and you beautifully summarized it in terms of rather than build brand equity, which was once upon a time the labor of love all of us would want to kind of get into bed with. Probably let's build belief systems, both in brands and in people.
That's a beautiful way to articulate it. I will carry that with me.
Thank you so
Belief
much.
systems.
Thank you so much, Lulu, for doing it amidst your travel and other itineraries. Really, really thankful to you for coming across. And let's
worries.
continue the conversation offline.
Absolutely.
All right? Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having me.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.